Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome to another League of Legends patch 6.20 guide. Today we are covering top lane Garen.
My heart and sword, always for Demacia.
Garen is a pretty solid top laner with great built-in sustain from his passive and great built-in resistances from his W. He's still got pretty good base damage despite the nerfs he received quite a while ago, and he's great at deleting fed carries with his ultimate. He's then got decent mobility from his Q, however this does not actually have a gap closer, it is just a speed increase. This is part of the reason Garen is so easy to kite. Some of his hardest matchups in that top lane are things like Kayle, who can easily slow him, and Teemo if he goes for a Frozen Mallet build. Although Garen does have the potential with his kit to delete these champions, he will never make it to them. Lastly, there is the fact that he does lack crowd control. He has a silence on his Q, which is rather nice, but other than that, he brings no crowd controls to the table. Despite those cons, Garen is a rather tanky champion, and he can deal some devastating damage in the right circumstances. For my Masteries, I like to go 12 Ferocity and 18 Resolve, grabbing Grasp of the Undying as my keystone mastery. Now Garen already has some decent sustain in his kit from his passive, however this only works when you're out of combat, so Grasp of the Undying really adds some nice sustain when you are in actual fights. Thunderlords and Storm Raiders could potentially be okay, but I do think Grasp is by far superior to these Masteries. If you're not a fan of Grasp though, then consider the Storm Raiders and Thunderlords. For my rune page, I like to stay very generic and get attack damage reds, armor yellows, scaling magic resist blues, and attack damage quints. Some alternatives I've been playing around with would be armor penetration reds and movement speed quints. The armor penetration is of course fantastic for getting through armor, and then the movement speed is pretty good as well for adding some added mobility since you are so kiteable, but in the end, I do like taking attack damage instead. For your first summoner spell, you'll want either Flash or Ghost. Flash is a great pick since it is a very solid escape, and can be great to actually close a gap on a target if you are getting kited. Ghost, on the other hand, is really nice to add a bunch of mobility in teamfights so you can actually get onto a high kill priority target. As a general rule, if there is a lot of champions that can kite you, then I will take Flash, but if not, I like the Ghost so I can move around in teamfights. Next, you'll want to grab either Teleport or Ignite. Teleport's my favorite here because Garen does make a pretty solid split pusher, and you'll be able to sit into a side lane and basically make it to teamfights or objectives whenever you are needed. Ignite, on the other hand, can add a lot of kill pressure in that top lane, and can sometimes be the difference in getting you to snowball in that lane. Now let's kick off your abilities with your passive, Perseverance. So, Garen generates between 0.2 and 1% of his maximum health every half second if he has not taken non-minion damage in the last between 9 and 4 seconds. At level 11, damage from non-epic monsters will no longer stop Perseverance, and at 16, Perseverance's power is increased significantly, hence that jump from 0.4 to 1%. So this passive is pretty solid because if you are getting bullied in the top lane, you can back out for a little bit and regenerate some health. When you combine it with the regeneration from the Doran Shield and the fact that it does increase your maximum health so you do get some more regeneration from it as well, it's a really solid ability. At level 16, you then regenerate your health really fast, and after a team fight, you usually don't have to even back because just in a couple seconds, you'll have a pretty decent health pool again. But now let's look at that Q ability, Decisive Strike. Garen cleanses himself of all slows affecting him and gains 30% bonus movement speed for a few seconds, and it can last up to 3.5 seconds. Now the fact that this does cleanse slow is a pretty nice thing on Garen, but if you are against something like a Frozen Mallet or something from a Teemo, then it's just going to get reapplied. But anyways, his next basic attack within 4.5 seconds deals additional physical damage, silences a target for 1.5 seconds, and slows his target for 0.5 seconds. The bonus physical damage here is between 30 and 130 plus 40% AD, and this also resets his auto attack timer. So since this does reset your auto attack timer, a really simple combo is to auto attack, use this, and auto attack right after it again, and get off some pretty decent damage in a really quick duration. But other than that, this is pretty much used to engage. 30% bonus movement speed for 3.5 seconds is a really nice way to get into a fight, of course unless you are CC'd or slowed. Now here is your W, Courage. So passively, Garen permanently gains 0.25 bonus armor and magic resist every time he kills an enemy unit, up to a maximum of 30 bonus resistances. When activated, Garen reduces incoming damage by 30% for a few seconds, and it lasts up to 6 seconds. So this is a nice ability to grab either at level 2 or 3, depending on the enemy champion you are against, so you can start stacking that armor and magic resist. Then very simply, when you are trading with the enemy champion, you want to use this when the largest portion of damage is coming in so you can reduce as much as possible. Go in for your Q plus E combo, and when they start hitting you, activate this ability. Alright, so let's look at that last basic ability, your E, Judgment. This is your spin ability, and is why people call Garen Spin to Win. When you activate the ability, you spin for 3 seconds, and for that duration, you cannot basic attack, you are ghosted, and you deal physical damage in 5 to 10, based on your level, spins to enemies within range, increased by 33.3% when damaging a single enemy. Judgment can also critically hit, dealing 50% plus 100% bonus critical damage, bonus damage. However, I'm not really a fan of that AD Garen build. It is honestly pretty crap and very gimmicky, so we're not going to build something like an IE. After 1 second, Garen can reactivate Judgment to cancel it immediately and reduces its cooldown by its remaining duration. So this is your main ability, but we're not maxing it as fast as we can because the spins are actually based on your champion level and not the level of the skill. Of course, while you are leveling it, you are getting more damage per spin, but the best way to actually level this ability is level it up when you're actually going to get another spin. But we'll talk about that on the actual skill order page. First though, let's cover that ultimate, Demacian Justice. So I'm not going to read the full passive here. Basically, somebody is marked as the villain, and it'll be the person that's got the most kills in the last 5 minutes. Why is the villain important? Well, Garen's basic attacks in each spin of Judgment actually deal bonus damage, which is 1% of their maximum health, as bonus true damage. Now when you activate the ability, Garen calls upon the Might of Demacia to attempt to execute the target enemy champion, dealing them magic damage, which is converted to true damage if it is against the villain. This is between 175 and 525 base, plus between 28.6 and 40% of the target's missing health. And that right there is why it is such a good execute. Now generally, you will be using it on the villain as long as they are a very high kill priority target. Generally, this will be the case because it will be the person that has had the most kills in the last 5 minutes, so hence, it's usually going to be the most fed target. If it is, however, something like a Volibear jungle because he's going around ganking your whole team, then usually you're not going to use this ability on him. You're going to still target an AD carry, or maybe the AP carry, depending on who is more of a threat. All in all, this is a fantastic ability. Make sure you are saving it until somebody is relatively low HP, as this is the way to deal as much damage as possible with the ability. So now here is that skill order, and of course we put 1 point into our ultimate whenever we can, so 6, 11, and 16. Now as for leveling spins like I was talking about, let's talk about when you actually get an extra spin on the E ability. So you get 5 spins at level 1, 6 at 4, 7 at 7, 8 at level 10, 9 at level 13, and 10 at level 16. So as you can see here, obviously we start with 1 in our queue as it is our best way of getting some mobility and the silence is rather strong, but then we take it at level 2, and then 4, 7, 10, and 13. Each one of these levels, we are getting a full extra spin from our E ability, and this will maximize our damage. Doing it like this, we'll also be able to put a bunch of points into our queue, increasing that mobility, and it is a lot better for engaging onto teams. We then save our W for last, but we do take 1 single point at level 3, so we can get that stacking for some bonus armor and magic resist. For our first combo, we have our trading combo, and it's incredibly easy to pull off. Start by hitting the enemy with your decisive strike, then activate your judgment and get your spins on the enemy, then back off and wait for your cooldowns, and then re-engage. Of course, when damage starts coming in from the enemy, activate your courage to reduce that damage. For our all-in combo, we start by activating our decisive strike. Then we have the option of flashing if we do need to close that gap as quickly as possible. Then we'll want to start spinning with our judgment, and then we can use ignite if we did take that summoner ability. Then finally, when they are within the kill threshold, we activate our Demacian Justice to execute that enemy. Now of course you don't want to waste your flash and ignite if you don't need to, only use these abilities if you know you're going to need to get that kill. In the early game, make sure you focus on last hitting on Garen so you can get your courage passive stacks. I would recommend, however, that you're not last hitting with Judgment because in the early game you're not very tanky yet and very gankable. Now with that being said, you're still a lane bully in most matchups and you don't want to play like you're a Nasus. When you're trading, start with an auto attack and instantly follow up with a decisive strike and then Judgment. Of course, unless you have to open with the decisive strike because the enemy is ranged. When you know that a lot of damage is going to come in from the enemy, make sure you activate your courage to reduce that damage. Also, make sure you are watching the map for teleport ganks. You do have pretty good mobility and damage, so make sure you are taking full advantage. In the mid game, Garen becomes a pretty strong champion. You'll have some great damage from your abilities and be tanky at the same time since you'll have some tanky items and have your courage stacked. As previously mentioned, you don't always want to focus on the villain. If it's on a low kill priority target, don't waste your ultimate just because they're your villain. Your goal will pretty much always be to delete either the AD carry or AP carry with your Demacian Justice. Now in the mid game, you're also going to have the option of split pushing. If there's no one strong enough to 1v1 you, pressure a side lane as much as you can, but pay attention to the map for when you need to teleport. In late game teamfights, you still have the same goal: delete a high kill priority target and soak a bunch of damage for your team. If you are unable to get to the backline because you're getting kited, then you may have to ultimate another squishy target. Deleting something early when you have the option is better than not using it at all. If, however, the enemy frontline is doing a fantastic job and you can't make it to the backline, then you're going to have to use your Demacian Justice on the frontline. Hopefully one of these targets in the front will be your villain and you'll be able to Demacian Justice them for some high true damage. Upon deleting that target, then of course you can get to the backline. If your team is losing the game, then you're going to want to try to split push as long as you can and delay it so your team can catch up. So now let's look at some hard matchups, and coming in at number 1 is Kayle. She's so hard for you to the point that it's pretty much an unwinnable matchup unless you get a lot of help from your jungler. For your first items, you're going to want to rush a Spectre's Cowl and Merc Treads and probably upgrade it to a Spirit Visage as well. She's really annoying because when you try to go in for a decisive strike, she's just going to slow you and her ultimate completely counters yours. Get as much farm as you can and make sure you're watching for those teleport ganks. This is your best way of snowballing. Teemo is then a little bit easier than Kayle, but he's still cancer. His Blinding Dart can completely stop your decisive strike, and he has the mobility to easily kite you. Get early boots, and if he is going for an AP build, make sure you follow up with a Hex Drinker and Spectre's Cowl. When you do want to try to all-in him, make sure you bait out his Blinding Dart so you can re-engage and all-in his squishy ass. Then there is Aatrox, and you may not see Aatrox very often, but he can be rather hard for Garen. You need to itemize mostly armor, but you will also need to pick up some magic resist because of the poke from his Blades of Torment. Killing them can also be rather hard because of his revive passive. Generally, you'll want to kill him without your ultimate, and when he revives, then it's time for Demacian Justice. Now we've got some more hard matchups, and coming in first, Darius. God damn, I hate Darius. Don't ever get into long fights because of his stacking bleeds. Make sure you build a solid combination of armor and health early so he can't easily all-in you. When he uses his Decimate on minions, then it's time to engage using your Judgment. In this matchup, you want to actually use Judgment first, because then you can follow up with a Decisive Strike to silence him, so you can run away and he can't pull you. Now we have Gnar, and he's incredibly annoying as well, because he's got a ton of poke. Get some early armor and ninja tabbies to help deal with all the poke he puts out. When you want to go in on him with a Decisive Strike, he's usually just going to hop away and keep you slowed with his Boomerang. Farm as much as you can and wait until you can all-in him with your Demacian Justice, or of course you have a gank come in. Now against Pantheon, you're going to want to start with Cloth Armor and Pots. Wait until you're level 4 to trade, because at this point in the lane, believe it or not, it actually becomes rather even. The annoying thing here is you're going to have to hit him with an auto attack before your Q because of his passive shield. So take off that passive with an auto attack, follow up with your usual Q plus E combo, and make sure you build a lot of armor, because his spears are cancer. Alright, so let's finish off this guide with our item build. So generally, you're going to want to start with a Doran's Shield, Health Potion, and Warding Totem, because a lot of the matchups out there can be relatively hard. If you are in a very, very easy matchup though, you could start with a Doran's Blade instead of the Shield to all-in that target. Of course, Cloth Armor and Pots is a great start as well, especially if you are against something like a Pantheon or a Tryndamere. So for our core build, we have the Black Cleaver, since it works really good with our E and can shred armor. Then we have the Sunfire Cape and Spirit Visage. For our boot options, we have Merc Treads if there's a lot of AP and CC, Ninja Tabbies if there's a lot of AD, and Boots of Swiftness if we want full-on mobility. For our armor options, we have the usual Dead Man's Plate for mobility, Randuin's for reducing crits and the nice AoE slow, and Thornmail against full AD teams. Banshee's Veil is a fine option as well if we do need some magic resist and a way of blocking a CC. If we want a mass health just because we can and the enemy doesn't have any % of max health damage dealers, then there's the Warmogs as well. Then we have two ways of gaining a shield, the Maw and the Steraxe. The Maw is nice against AP assassins, and the Steraxe is good if we're just against a normal team. If we want some more damage and more mobility, we could get a Yumu's Ghostblade. The downside here is we will remain somewhat squishy, but at least we'll have a lot more damage and a better way to get onto targets. Titanic Hydra is then a great way of adding some split push and some extra damage and health pool. If we need some added damage and nobody on our team feels like getting grievous wounds, then we have the Mortal Reminder as well. It's a pretty solid item. In that ultra late game, like always, we have the Guardian Angel because coming back to life is awesome, and if we want full on added split push, the ZZ Rot Portal. So for our standard full build, we take our core and then add a Dead Man's Plate and a Thorn Mail. This will give us a really large health pool, a bunch of armor, and some solid magic resist as well. If we want to be more of a bruiser, we take our core, add a Sterax Gauge, and a Titanic Hydra. We'll still have tons and tons of health with a bunch of magic resist and armor, but we'll deal a bunch more damage. This is a great build to choose if we don't need to go for full-on tank because we have a rather tanky support and jungler. If we are, however, the only tank on the team, then generally we're going to have to go for more of that standard full build. Well, with the item build over, that concludes our top lane Garen guide. If you guys do want to look for more champion guides, make sure you visit our website, egamingtv.com, and if you are interested in skin giveaways, we do them on our Twitter at egaming_TV. But anyways, thank you guys a ton for watching the guide. I hope you guys did enjoy it, and I will see you guys in the next champion guide. Peace!
Maybe it's just the way we were, maybe it's just the way I am. Maybe it's that feeling every time I got to hold your hand. I know that's cheesy, but I just want you to understand the memories are there, even if you forgot how we danced. Hurt feelings, numb nights, you know it's all the same. If love's an endless battle, why'd we